Hey everybody, Nick Beatleston from Good Impacts here. Thanks for joining us. And we've got the incomparable Mark VanderKlipp with us today. So this ethical entrepreneur webinar is being presented by Good Impacts. We help guide ethical entrepreneurs along their business journey. We provide a number of ethical business services, helping folks all the way from project design and implementation through to creating systemic change within their industry. And we also provide a few specific services to nonprofits. And please feel free to visit goodimpacts.com for more information. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. We're going to go ahead and keep everybody muted for the duration of our conversation. Just makes things flow easier. Please, feel free to turn on your video if you'd like. If you're going to have a breakfast burrito, also feel free to leave it off. Like I mentioned, please use the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen for any questions or disparaging remarks. Put those in there too. Everything's helpful. And then this webinar is being recorded for future use because there's 7 billion people and not everybody could make it. So we want to be able to get it to all of them in the next couple of weeks. Quick note about myself so we can talk much more about Mark, who's exceedingly more interesting. I started Good Impacts in 2018. It was initially named Sustainable Development Solutions, but that's just a hellacious URL. So the goal has always been and continues to be supporting ethical businesses as champions for change. I have a communications and background, communications and journalism background. I make words good. I make a lot of words good. I've also worked for and served on the boards of multiple nonprofits, including some really fulfilling and interesting community development work within the specialty coffee supply chain. And then I did a couple of tours with the 82nd Airborne. Turns out, yeah, love to travel, love to jump out of planes. Lousy soldier, not for me.
Well, thank you for your service anyway, Nick.
Yeah, no, this is what happens. I'm your tax dollars hard at work. So, so a little bit about Mark, who is an amazing human being and very humble, but he shouldn't be because he's amazing. Lifelong experience in systems design, 30 plus years in human-centric design, helping clients really understand and embrace what the customer journey means, to think about it from the customer's perspective. For over a decade, Mark led a local and very well-known environmental graphic design firm, at which point he worked with a number of state and national healthcare, higher education, and tourism organizations all around the country. Mark has served on the executive committees of the SEGD, which Mark stands for.
Society for Experiential Graphic Design.
Of course it does, yeah. Oh, we all know. And the Association of Professional Design Firms. He is a highly sought after speaker to global trade associations and design orgs and student groups. So we're lucky to get the chance to pick his brain today. He's received his evidence-based design certification through the Center for Health Design and is a certified systems practitioner and Sherpa through Acumen. He's a loud, proud 87 grad of the University of Michigan. He serves
Not a guard. It says guard.
It does say guard. but I feel like you're also
I got
proud.
sure.
And a communications director of the U of M Alumni Club. Also a loud, proud Traverse City track member and a Boston marathoner. Mark is definitely a runner at heart. So yeah, let's chat, Mark.
All right.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can all focus on our beautiful faces. So, Mark, I think it'd be helpful to briefly talk about transitioning from working at that design firm to being an independent contractor and consultant.
Yeah, so I was at Corbin Design locally for 24 years, and it was great. I love the work. I started as the Cub designer back in '92. Moved up here with my wife Suzanne, and we were in a recession at the time, and I wasn't really sure I'd be able to keep my job. But ultimately, I ended up leading the firm. We bought it out from the founder, Jeff Corbin, and I led it through another recession back in '08 and '09. And then on the other end of that, there were a few things that had gone on in my world. So I had survived prostate cancer in 2014, and then the same year tried to qualify for my first Boston marathon qualifier and didn't quite make it. I missed it by 3 minutes in 2014. So then in 2015, post-surgery, I was able to qualify with the help of some fellow training buddies, and 2016 ran that marathon. And then I was kind of looking around afterwards and saying, what else is there? What part of my life isn't really working for me right now? And even though I loved my job and I was very proud of the work I was doing there, I just had this itch to have a bigger impact. Because we worked throughout North America, I was constantly traveling. I didn't really know many people locally, although I guess people knew of me because I was running Corbin. But I decided that I wanted to have more of a local impact, and I wanted to see where design capability was needed to work on different types of problems. So I decided to leave the company. It was left in good hands. It's still going strong as far as I know, and try and focus on other types of work.
Gotcha. And for folks that are interested in learning more about Mark's transition, he's on a couple of episodes of the really phenomenal Experience 50 podcast, episode 69 and episode 147. And I'll throw a link up to that at the end of our time together. But yeah, you can hear all about that transition in detail. So Mark, maybe also talk a little bit about some of the organizations that you've had a chance to work with since making that transition, and what's come of some of that work.
Well, one of the things that we did at Corbin Design was wayfinding systems. So basically making sense of the built environment for people in different types of institutional settings. So we did a lot of work in city wayfinding, major city wayfinding in Calgary, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Fort Worth, lots of big cities. Then we also did quite a few large universities. And the most, I thought the most impactful and most interesting work that we were doing was in healthcare. So at the time I left, we had done, I think, something like 135 different health systems throughout North America. And I was really interested in moving into the realm of patient experience, not just so much wayfinding, but how do you take the entire experience that a patient has in these very complicated environments before, during, and after the visit, and use communication skills to make that path much less stressful. So the first big client that I worked for locally was the surgery center here, now the Copper Ridge Surgery Center, and we did a patient experience initiative internally to really focus more on how to interconnect what had been siloed departments within the surgery center to better serve the patient. But I also started volunteering for organizations like the Coalition to End Homelessness. I worked for the Homeless Youth Initiative. The Traverse Bay Children's Advocacy Center, we're doing a public will campaign right now to end child sexual abuse in our lifetimes. That is an interesting challenge and very much worthwhile. And I've been working with the Northern Michigan Community Health Innovation Region, or the Shire, CHIR, here locally for the last year and a half to speak to the experience of people at the intersection of healthcare and homelessness. So how do people get lost between these big complicated systems, and what can we do to keep them from falling through the cracks? Because homelessness, we know, is in itself a health condition and not a very good one. So we've been studying those systems, and we've been developing tools to bring practitioners in physical health, behavioral health, addiction treatment, that sort of thing, closer to the homelessness prevention sector.
So there's some really clear through lines with all of that work, creating happier, healthier, safer communities. It's obviously something that you're really passionate about, but we also know that there's just an incredible amount of need out there, more need than any one person can meet. As an independent consultant and contractor, how do you decide where to draw that line between pro bono work and giving away value for free?
Yeah, I mean, there is a tremendous amount of need. So what I bring is design thinking and skills that other people just don't have to the conversation. So most of my work right now is grant funded, and it's always been my job to make very complicated environments more legible and more navigable. And so this very much falls into that whole wayfinding concept. And so I have found that organizations really need to have design thinking, and especially in terms of framing the challenges that they're dealing with, helping them say, what do these systems look like? How do they work? And where can we identify gaps and opportunities to try and solve these problems for folks? So in a lot of ways, it's looking at it from the standpoint of the person experiencing, in one case, homelessness or child sexual abuse, but also from the standpoint of the people that are providing services to help those folks. So in doing that, it's the experience on both sides that we're trying to service and make more legible and make basically simpler so that people can better serve those populations.
So
with respect to how do you draw the line between pro bono, I still do share a lot of my time. I basically track it as business development, and there are a lot of worthy causes here. Some of my former clients, I just do continuing work for them because it's important. It's important to me, and it's important for them. And even though they don't have budgets to compensate me, I do it as an in-kind donation.
Yeah, and you mentioned something interesting about looking at it as business development. Obviously, like we said, it's work that you're passionate about, but there is also a strategic benefit to working on these community level initiatives, sometimes off the clock.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that you need to provide to people is, first of all, you have to be passionate about what they're passionate about. You have to be reliable and thoughtful. And sometimes when you're working pro bono, you're in a better position to bring the more disruptive idea forward. And so in a lot of those cases, I can be the contrarian. I can be the person that asks what would otherwise be a stupid question, like, "Hey, I don't understand this, and why does the system work this way?" So that we can begin those conversations and open up our aperture, think in new directions. And that's the challenge that I like to bring to these projects.
So understanding that a lot of this work is passionate driven, and this is so often the case with ethical entrepreneurs, you run really hard, really fast. You push yourself really hard, which is great as long as you can maintain it, but it inevitably leads to burnout for so many people with amazing intentions. Have you been able to translate your running experience practically over to pacing yourself when it comes to doing this passion-driven work?
Yeah, it is interesting. There are a lot of parallels, and all of this work, as we know, trying to end child sexual abuse. This is a marathon, right? It is not a sprint. It requires daily discipline, and you have to have a goal in mind, and you have to have a reason to put your feet on the floor and lace up your running shoes every morning too, even though all of my races have been canceled so far this summer. But it's that daily discipline, I think, to say, at the end of the day, did I move these projects forward in the increments that are appropriate, so that we're all still headed in the same direction, in the right direction. And I think that's a really important thing for not just independent consultants, but also people that are working in these environments. My clients are on these daily journeys as well. And I want to be working and thinking alongside them. And in a lot of cases, maybe even providing some inspiration and momentum for them. We support each other in that work.
That segues really well into another really important topic for ethical entrepreneurs, and that's this sense of isolation that can add to burnout and can be overwhelming. And for somebody like you with a really unique skill set, is isolation something that you ever have to contend with? And if not, why isn't it? And if it is, how do you deal with it?
So when I started my new business, well, welcome to my basement, obviously. I've been working on my basement since last September, actually. But Nick and I do occupy space in the Commonplace co-working space. The reason I joined Commonplace initially was just to be around other busy people. That's very inspiring to me. It's motivating to me. The great part about Commonplace was that the census was different, right? So I would see and meet and talk to different people every day. And I'm a natural networker. I keep relationships going with people with whom I've served on different boards and other things like that. That's just what I do. And so when I was starting to feel discouraged or I was starting to feel too isolated, I would just start to reach out. Like, for me, activity is the most important thing. And when I can have an inspiring conversation or contribute to a webinar like this, it's super fun for me. I love it. And some of those faces that I haven't seen in a long time, I'm starting to say, well, maybe we ought to just connect on a Zoom call if we can't have coffee together. And I have done that with some of our coworkers. Of course, Nick, you and I have been working together, talking, multiple times a day as it goes. So that's helpful as well. But yeah, I mean, it is easy to feel isolated in the work. And so what I do is reach out and start conversations.
So this next and probably final question for me, so we can get to some audience questions. Started off as a typo, but it actually, I think, is pretty interesting. Folks watching are at all different stages of their ethical business journey, and there's so much good advice out there for people. But what's a piece of bad advice you can give folks based on your personal trials and tribulations?
All right, so here's the ultimate bad advice. When you decide to leave your square job, your real job, your full-time job, don't have a plan. Just go ahead and just say, you know what, I'm done with that. I'm going to go do something else. So when I was with Corbin, I had written a non-solicitation contract for every employee so that you couldn't just leave the company and take a bunch of clients with you or poach a bunch of employees. And so I was obviously subject to that. So when I walked away from Corbin Design, I couldn't reach out to clients and I couldn't speak to anyone in my network aside from competitors or people who I hadn't actually done a project with for 2 years. So I left my entire portfolio of work. I left all of my, basically paying contacts, and I just had to start from scratch. So if I were starting an ethical business now, I would say better develop a plan and think, be more thoughtful in how you start your business. I just jumped.
But it happened and it worked out partially because of your tenacity, but also the amazing community that we find ourselves in, I think.
Absolutely right. Yep. And if it wasn't for that, commonplace community and the tremendous amount of, the types of folks that I've been working with in, especially the homelessness service sector, it would have been a much rougher go. And that surgery center project was a tremendous opportunity for me, and it was a way to do a little bit of a proof of concept, and it was really great work and motivated me, really helped me get my business on the rails. So
I want to switch over to a few minutes of Q&A. At the top, I directed folks to use the chat function, although I'm reminded that in the webinar form of Zoom, there's also a Q&A button you can hit just to the left of the chat function. So just to make it extra confusing, feel free to use both. But Cecilia asks who some of your clients are now.
So working for the Northern Michigan Community Health Innovation Region, the Traverse Bay Children's Advocacy Center. We have a call in 5 minutes here. Nick and I have been working on a rebrand project for the Traverse Bay Intermediate School District together. And Norte, I've been working with them or had worked with them on a systems mapping project for safe routes to school. Northwest Michigan Supportive Housing, all those different types of clients who have been looking for design services. And it's interesting that they're systems-based discussions that we're having. So the ISD project the question that was posed to me was, how does this system work? What does it look like? And so we came up with a metaphor of a railroad roundhouse, the ISD being the hub that takes directives from the state level and positions them correctly so that they serve school districts and ultimately learners. So it's that sort of work that we've been up to. It's been a lot of fun.
And John wants to know if you've noticed any particular differences in the types of problems and features that clients are looking for or hoping to solve pre-COVID and now.
Yeah, I mean, COVID has just become reality. And so in the initial stages of COVID, we had lots of group sessions that were planned to talk about healthcare and homelessness from the standpoint of child welfare system, juvenile justice system, youth behavioral health. And we had all of these in-person meetings that were going to be co-facilitated by me and Tina Allen, my colleague. And those just stopped. But then a couple of weeks later, everybody was like, oh, okay, here's a new way of working. And COVID is a part of every one of those conversations now. And so it's just become another design constraint that we put into our systems-based discussions. I think it's going to be a reality for the foreseeable future. So.
Any particular opportunities that you see emerging despite all the challenges?
For COVID?
Yeah, as a result of some of that shift in thinking.
Yeah, I think the opportunity that's emerged, especially with people being more comfortable working remotely, is the fact that people understand that their opinions really matter. So when we are designing services or systems for people that are going to be using those systems, especially with healthcare experience, or even as we were talking about earlier, you know, what do public spaces look like now that are designed to be safe and available, accessible to people, but also allow the type of discourse that our American society and societies around the world are demanding that they have in those public spaces. So there's a tremendous human-centered design opportunity here now. People's voices need to be heard. And in these last few months, they've really gotten used to being heard across a variety of media. So I think we need to take advantage of that. One of the ways to do that is I've been proposing virtual patient family advisory committees through using a software program that already exists for community engagement for cities mostly, but they're adapting that to healthcare settings. And I want to be able to work with healthcare organizations that can apply this basically community development software to the conversations that happen about healthcare experience.
As a quick wrap-up question, Mark, Loanne wants to know what's on the horizon for you.
Yep, so we're starting a group of consultants. We're actually organizing under an umbrella here, and Nick, you'll be a part of that, but we've been talking about it for a long time. How do we pull together the right consultants to work on these, basically what we call wicked problems, together in a way that's standardized and understandable to people who might be using our services? So we've been talking with a group of about, I've been talking with about 4 other consultants, and what we're doing is starting an LLC. And we will be curating a team of consultants that can be brought in to work on these different problems with their skill sets that they bring to that challenges that we address. And we're trying to think of the business model that's going to support that financially, but also how do we recruit and maintain that census of consultants over the long term. I'm also talking to a colleague out of Melbourne, Australia, that wants to start a global consultancy that's directed to wayfinding. So I might be going back into that world given the necessities of the recession. However, I would be bringing the human-centered kind of patient experience point of view to those projects. And we would have offices that are centered in Chicago, Amsterdam, the UK, and Australia, and Croatia. So we've been talking about unifying underneath an umbrella that's a global organization there as well.
So some wicked problems in and of themselves, just around organizing. But once that happens,
and when you're a sole proprietor, you know, our global headquarters is right here in my basement. But you need to my need to keep networking, keep developing my potential opportunities for business development, and keep my pipeline strong. All of these efforts are ways to do that, but there are also ways to work with really smart people on really wicked problems and do better work. That's the goal.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again real quick just for a couple of wrap-up slides so everybody can get on their way. So 3 ways to connect with Mark. you can visit his website, connect-cx.com. You can sign up for his newsletter. Mark, that's a weekly, monthly?
Monthly.
Monthly newsletter? Okay, excellent. And then you can feel free to drop him a line, his email there. Mark, I thought about putting your phone number up and encouraging folks to call you at 1, 2 a.m. to just have long, thought-provoking conversations.
Sure, why not?
And like I mentioned, Mark was a guest on episode 69 and 147 of the really excellent Experience 50 podcast. I'm not in the target demographic for that podcast, and I've still listened to it's so many episodes. It's great. Yeah, God willing, eventually I'll be in their demographic. Couple of ways to stay connected with Good Impacts. Feel free to visit our website, goodimpacts.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. Or drop us a line at goodimpacts.com. Real quick, we've got another webinar coming up on Friday with Matt Early, the co-founder of Just Coffee, a nationwide coffee brand. And he's going to talk about 5 things somebody really should have told him back when he started his ethical business a number of years ago. So yeah, feel free to hop over to our Facebook and register for that. Mark, anything to say to the nice people before we call it a day?
Thank you for coming. It's been a lot of fun, Nick. And I'm sure I'll be talking to you very soon again.
Yeah. All right. I think that'll do it. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.